Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 9 of season 1 of Arrow called Year's End. Now this is the last episode that we get to see before the show goes on winter break for a while, but this is a really good episode. There's some really awesome stuff that happens this time around, and there's also some pretty ridiculous things that happen this time around. But we're going to talk about all of that, so let's get right into it. All right, now the first thing that I did like about this episode was that they did take the time to bring back Adam Hunt. This continues to establish the show's strong sense of continuity, and it does, of course, bring us back full circle, in a way, to episode 1, which really I think is there to make us think about just how much Oliver has grown as a character. I mean, this is a guy who was breaking the necks of thugs, just to protect his secret identity, and Oliver hasn't done that now for 2 episodes. But if you put that aside as an anomaly, he has improved a lot. He is at the very least much more reluctant to take the lives of people, right? But yeah. Hey, did you notice how that Quentin mentioned that the Arrow of the vigilantes stole for like $40 million from Adam Hunt? If the cops know about that, shouldn't they be, getting that money back? I mean, granted, it was given to people who certainly deserved it, but, this money was given to me by a vigilante who stole it from a guy. I'm pretty sure the courts would have something to say about that, or at the very least, Adam Hunt's lawyers. Now, granted, it looks like Adam's been reduced to being, shacking up at a crummy motel or his daughter's place or something like that. But still, I don't think that's going to fly legally. But, hey, things like this you just sort of need to just kind of let go. Now, of course, we do finally get the name Green Arrow said. Some people on the line have really been bellyaching endlessly about this. I think it's sort of ridiculous. But I can't say I like the idea that as soon as the words Green Arrow are uttered by anybody, the character who is Green Arrow has to go and say, "Oh, well, that's I think it sounds ridiculous, or I think it's lame, or whatever it is exactly that Oliver said." And I know this is supposed to be ironic and funny, but it just sort of seems like they're really deriding the source material. Now, I don't actually think the people that made the show are doing that. I think they've been making some real pains and some serious efforts to be friendly to the people who are the fans of the comics, to the mythology. We've gotten a lot of great shout-outs to the DC universe as a whole. But here, it's just one of those things that, to me, it just seems like this was supposed to be funny, but instead it just sort of seems kind of condescending. I think it would have been much better if Oliver had just been sort of like, that's kind of a cute name, and you just sort of laughed it off or just sort of ignored it or whatever. Having him just openly be condescending towards it, I can't say that I really approve of that choice. But anyway, getting back to what's going on here. Let's talk about the characters first, and then we'll get on to some more of the plot-related issues that I had. This time around, it's more of a story episode. We do have our character moments, but it's much more light. Now, first of all, let's talk about Oliver. Is it just me, or does it seem like Oliver really should have picked up on the fact that, with him and him believed dead, and his father definitely dead, that maybe the family just wouldn't want to celebrate the holidays, and that this could kind of just become an ingrained thing. The fact that he needs to go and sort of dig this out of Thea just makes Oliver seem, at worst, a little dumb. I mean, at best, a little dumb. At worst, surprisingly insensitive to his family's pain, which, of course, is Thea's job. I gotta say, that scene with her really getting on Oliver's case, that was some serious BS. But I do like that later in the show, Thea admitted that basically, and she even flat out says, "Well, that was me being a bitch." So I do like that the show acknowledged that. And that is a pretty not exactly an unreasonable thing to expect from a teenage girl. But I do think it is a testament to Thea's character that she's willing to admit that she was out of line there. And yeah, this apart from that, there's not really a lot going on with Thea. I mean, she and Oliver did have a few cute moments, and that does seem to be one of the stronger aspects of Oliver's character outside of what he's got going on as Green Arrow. I mean, there's some very nice chemistry between the actors there. But, this whole Shane thing, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. I think that their efforts to show Thea as this sort of party girl who screws around with drugs, look, either do that consistently or just have Thea be your typical slightly bratty but ultimately good at heart teenager. Trying to balance the two, it's really not working so well. Now, Oliver's heart does seem to be in the right place with throwing this party, and I really didn't really enjoy that scene very much. Where he's talking about I haven't been the stepson and son and brother, and that I should have been. Okay, Oliver maybe could have handled his relations with his family since coming back from the island a little better, but let's keep in mind, as far as they know, Oliver's a guy who spent 5 years stuck on an island after after being part of the deaths of his father and the sister of someone he was very close to, and he has received no psychological counseling or treatment at all. And then everybody just sort of acts like, oh yeah, well Oliver's being, reasonable of manning up to his mistakes. Never mind that they're not say Oliver, you've been through a lot. We understand that you're going to be having some problems here. I mean, even Walter is like this. It just really makes the rest of the family seem like insensitive dicks. So yeah, but still, I do like that I do like that. That scene where Oliver wants a family photo, and it is somewhat awkward. I like how Walter doesn't even really make any effort at all to smile, but still, his heart is obviously in the right place. Now, at the end of the day, our big thing, we get a really cool fight between Oliver and I don't even want to call this guy Black Arrow. We'll talk about him more later. The name of the character in the comics is Merlin, and that's just what I'm going to call him. But we'll talk about him some more later. But getting back to the Queen family, I did like the scene between Moira and Walter. Walter makes a really good case as to why Moira needs to level with him, and Moira doesn't do such a great job of explaining why she can't level with Walter, because, well, at this point Walter is basically in about as deep as he can go. So I mean, John Barrowman's character, Malcolm Merlin, it is Malcolm, that is his given name, knows that Walter knows. So why don't you just level with Walter so that he fully understands the situation? It's the whole thing of him flailing around trying to find out what's going on that really caused this situation to escalate. And with that said, now Walter's been apparently taken prisoner by the organization, and I mean, just looking at that scene at the very end between Merlin and Moira, Merlin is going like, well, I wanted to let this go, but your family wouldn't stop messing with me. Okay, this completely falls apart if you forget. And Moira goes along with this. She doesn't bring up the fact that Merlin sent an assassin to murder her son, even based on what, as everybody seems to, as far as anyone knows, was a phony accusation. I mean, seriously. Now, granted, Moira is obviously the junior partner in this situation, but his whole argument there really doesn't hold water very well. Walter was poking around trying to find out what was going on under some highly suspicious circumstances. This dude tried to murder her son. And it's Walter that's the problem. And speaking of which, why aren't the queens a little bit more wigged out that, hey, somebody snuck into our house specifically, apparently, for the reason to try and murder Oliver? Now, granted, they probably just wrote that off as, somebody who didn't like the vigilante looking for payback, but shouldn't there be a little bit more concern that somebody apparently hired a professional assassin to murder Oliver? Now, granted, him being exonerated as the Arrow probably takes that off the table, but still, shouldn't they be out there, kicking the police's door down every single day saying, hey, why haven't you found out who it was that tried to have our son murdered? But anyway, moving on with the characters. Not really a whole lot to say about Laurel this time around. I do like the fact that she does acknowledge that she's been inconsistent with what's been going on between her and Tommy and Oliver. And that she's been sort of using spending Christmas with her dad as a bit of a dodge. Okay. That was an all right moment with Laurel, and the scene between her and Tommy at her apartment was pretty well done. Now, what's really interesting here is Tommy. Now, once again, I've said before that I think Tommy is probably the nicest person on the show. He's also, in many ways, one of the more realistic. Now, granted, if your girlfriend specifically says, "I want to spend the holidays with my dad," showing up at her apartment to invite her to a party is not the coolest move. But let's take a look at how Quentin reacts to this situation. Now, under the circumstances, he probably has he has some perfectly good reasons to be irritated there. Okay, as I said, Laurel has specifically told Tommy that she wants to spend Christmas with him. Okay, Tommy is also one of these billionaire playboy dudes who he does have some genuine reason to dislike. Now, granted, his reasons for disliking Tommy are not as strong as his reasons for disliking Oliver. But when he shows up, Tommy is very polite to him. He's apparently bears no grudge about the fact that Quentin hates his lifelong best friend and arrested him falsely for vigilantism. And he gives Laurel what is genuinely a very sweet and thoughtful gift. So, again, Tommy's being really being the classy guy here, apart from showing up after being told not to. But Laurel does sort of acknowledge that Tommy did have a good point in showing up and saying, like, Laurel, you're just using spending Christmas with your dad as an excuse. And I do like that he also is the one that acknowledges that, yes, despite what everybody's been saying, the situation between him and Oliver and Laurel is still a somewhat awkward thing, despite their best efforts. Well, we saw plenty of that last episode, but I've said what I had to say about that already. Anyway, so going on. Not a whole lot to say about what was going on with Dig this episode. He, again, kind of in a supporting role, background role. Felicity continues to be a pretty fun character. I like her, but I think it's time to start diving into my my complaints about the plot of this episode. Okay, first of all, why Felicity is an IT person? All right, her job is basically to keep the computers at Queen Consolidated working. At least this is what I understand her job to be. But both Walter and Oliver have gone to her for help in doing investigation stuff. Because, apparently people who are good with computers can do anything. She apparently can, with just a few seconds of dicking around on a blatantly product placement Samsung gadget. I guess it's one of those, Galaxy Tabs or Galaxy Pads or whatever the heck. I don't care. I'm an iPad guy, personally. But anyway, so within seconds, Felicity is able to find the copyright on this arrow thingy, which apparently also tells her where. Okay, let me step back here. When Felicity gives Oliver the information like, oh, these arrows were sent to this warehouse here. Okay, now I could get that if by examining the arrow, she might be able to figure out who made it. That's not unreasonable. But then she's able to find out just by looking at the stupid thing where it was the order for it was shipped. Now I'm sorry, but that information should have been in the database of the company that made the freaking thing. So apparently, within just seconds of glancing at something, Felicity can go and break into the computer system of another company in what is has to be illegal and give that information to Oliver, and she doesn't even blink. Look, I guess I don't think that it's really top secret information where somebody orders something where they have it delivered. But that said, that's not really something that companies just leave sitting around there for anybody who happens to wander by their website to see. I mean, seriously, Felicity would have had to do some honest to God hacking and thus break some laws in order to get that information, and she doesn't even say, I'd have to break the law in order to do that. It's not even acknowledged. She doesn't. So, yeah. Ah, boy. All right, so let's get into some of my this isn't all notes about this episode. I keep this is the big thing that I use for the notes for all the reviews I do. But I do have a pretty nice little list of stuff here. Now, okay, so Walter is surprised to find out that one of the people that works at Queen Consolidated is on that list of folks. Walter, I know that's apparently a pretty big list, but given how important it is, maybe you should have, sat down and read the whole thing rather than just passing it off to the lab geek girl who's not actually a lab geek. She's a corporate IT person who is in no way, shape, or form really qualified to do all this stuff that you keep asking her to do, you and Oliver. So really, the idea that Walter actually did not read this whole list, I mean, it is pretty ridiculous. Now, also, it's also kind of a little odd that Merlin, Tommy's dad, is now this is probably part of a trap to take down Green Arrow, but apparently is going to be well. Basically, here's what I'm saying. As near as I could tell, Oliver custom builds his own arrows. So I'm surprised he did. The idea that maybe his evil counterpart does the same doesn't even seem to occur to him. In fact, the idea that he would use these extremely specialized arrows and then have them shipped to an address which could, as we see in this episode, easily be traced. I mean, again, it's all part of a trap, but still, just the fact that this was so easy really should have been a tip off to Oliver that maybe this was just a little too easy. So, yeah. Either way, either Merlin comes off as being kind of stupid there, or Oliver seems kind of stupid there. There is no two ways about it. Somebody there was seriously dumb in that situation. And speaking of seriously dumb, Oliver, maybe you should have scouted that building out a little bit before you just wandered in the front door. And even worse, in the real world, you simply cannot outrun an explosion. That's not how things work. Now, granted, this is it's complaining about like this and stuff like this is complaining about how in an action movie 20 people could shoot machine guns at the hero and not one single bullet hit them. But still, people being able to outrun an explosion is just one of those things that really, really seems to annoy me. But I've made my point, so there's really no reason to keep harping on that. One thing that I did like was the mention of O'Neill and Adams during this episode. Of course, that's more reference to famous creators from the comics. Denny O'Neil, and I'm pretty sure that's probably Art Adams. Really, really talented folks. And of course, Denny O'Neil, one of the classic writer on Green Lantern, Green Arrow, who did the famous story about Speedy turning out to be a junkie, and of course has written many, many other fine comic books. Did some really nice stuff with Green Arrow. One of the best guys to ever write the Question. Very solid, lots of very solid Batman work. Again, Denny O'Neil, just really one of the all-time great legends of writing at DC Comics. And Art Adams, man, if you know who this guy is, then he is a fellow who needs no introduction. He's a guy who's done some absolutely stellar work at both Marvel and DC. Absolutely legendary run on X-Men. Really, 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 really talented dude. But anyway, let me see. Don't you hate it when you can't read your own handwriting? Yeah, let's pop back over to the island for a minute. So once again, we get to see the return of Eddie Friars. I did like that. We've been away from the island way too long. Honestly, in my mind, a lot of the stuff that happens on the island is often more interesting than what's actually going on in Starling City. So we also get to see him and Yao Fei return, and we get to learn some more details about the island, and that this was run by the Chinese military, and the only two people there who survived the whole purge thing were Yao Fei and Deathstroke. Okay, now first of all, I have to wonder why the Chinese government would bother to bring in a bunch of foreign mercenaries whose only real reason to keep quiet about murdering an entire prison full of people is money. This is, well, let's put it this way. Mercenaries are notoriously well known for not being terribly reliable and for being willing to do anything for money. And the question, of course, remains, well, okay, if you have this prison full of extraordinarily dangerous people and you decided it would be best to kill them all, why didn't you just, put some poison in their food? Or stop giving them water and let them die of dehydration in their cells? I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere once that without water, most people will die within about 3 days. Now, if you're dealing with somebody who's made of sterner stuff, it's probably a little bit longer than that. But even then, after 3 days with no water, they're going to be in pretty darn bad shape. It's not really the kind of shape where they can, put up a significant fight if you'd like to send some guys armed with machine guns into their cells to shoot them. And, Eddie Friars does raise a pretty good point that Yao Fei seems kind of dumb for not figuring out that Eddie let himself be captured. But, if this doesn't happen, then obviously Oliver would not have the opportunity to, as I'm sure we'll see in the future, go and do something really badass and save Yao Fei. Oh yeah, before I forget about this, I did get a kick out in the beginning, the scene where we first see Oliver and Dig. They're doing some knife fight training. Now this tells me that we're going to get to see another round between Dig and China White. In fact, this is probably Oliver specifically training Dig so that he'll be better prepared to fight China White again. And I personally think that's really awesome. As I've said before, I'm totally for anything that brings back Kelly Hu to the show. But I am still hoping that they will really get around to using somebody of her talents properly. It does, as I said last episode, it continues to bother me just how much when she's in these episodes, she'll end up having less than 5 lines of dialogue. It's a phenomenal waste of a very talented actress. Now, let me see here. Okay, I think that covers most everything that I wanted to talk about. So let's hit the big the big nugget, and that is John Barrowman's character is in fact revealed to be uh, Merlin, Black Arrow, whatever you want to call him. As I said, the character's name in the comics is simply Merlin. Now, I really like this because several reviews ago, if you've been watching, I did float the theory that that Tommy's dad might end up becoming, the basically this version of the Merlin from the comics, and that is exactly what we get to see happen. And then I also kind of went on that if that character were to die over the course of the series, and Tommy were to blame Green Arrow for that happening, then it would give him motivation to become the second Merlin, and thus lead to Oliver having his best friend turn into one of his arch enemies, and just be all that really classic comic book stuff. Now, granted, things could still go a different path, but just the nature of comic book storytelling tells me that's probably what's going to happen. But again, the reveal of it all was handled really well. It was interesting, dramatic, and we see that Merlin is indeed very much a match for Oliver. But of course, again, it's classic storytelling. The first time the hero goes up against the villain, they get their butt kicked. The hero goes off, they train, they get better, they fight this villain again, and this time the hero emerges triumphant. Again, classic storytelling. You see it in movies, you see it in books, mythology, whatever. Just real classic writing 101 stuff. And let me see here. Oh darn, there was something else that I wanted to talk about. It danced across my mind a second ago, and now I've forgotten. What was it? Oh yes. One other thing that I excuse me, said. One other thing that I wanted to talk about. The aftermath of Oliver's fight with Merlin is that he ends up in the hospital. Now, first of all, apparently Dig I guess Dig must have been hanging out nearby, because he was apparently able to sneak past the police, past all the TV cameras that had to be poking around the area, and somehow get Oliver out of there completely and utterly unnoticed. And then to a hospital, where all of Oliver's injuries get blamed on a traffic accident, despite the fact that Oliver, having been shot with arrows, would doubtlessly have puncture wounds that would in no way, shape, or form be consistent with a motorcycle accident. I can't help but wonder if off camera Diggs slipped the doctors a big old pack of money, because that's just dumb. Also, Oliver was wounded at the warehouse, which means that his blood with his DNA is going to be laying around that warehouse for any competent crime scene investigator to find. So if anybody ever decides to check Oliver's DNA against that of the vigilante, well, he's pretty darn screwed. So, yeah, let's see here. Anything else? Nope, I do indeed believe that covers everything that I wanted to talk about. So, again, overall, this is a pretty fun episode. There's some really nice continuity. There's some fun shout-outs to the comics, and John Barrowman ultimately being revealed as Black Arrow, aka Merlin, was really well done. I think the ultimate showdown between him and Green Arrow is going to be way awesome. But this episode is seriously bogged down by some pretty BS storytelling at times. But still, the goods far outweigh the positives far outweigh the negatives. I'm loving this show. I can't wait for it to come back, and I'm just really having a lot of fun with it. So, with that said, folks, I'm going to wrap it up here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and especially comment, because I totally want to hear what you guys have to say about this episode. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.